So, Alex, as I mentioned, this budget is a very conservative budget. They could have brought down fiscal deficit and borrowing program if they had added or retained divestment and small savings collection numbers at this year's level. That itself would have given a benefit of more than 2,66,000 crore. Clearly, government has not fallen into that trap. They are giving what is a realistic number on a conservative basis. Second, in the past, we have seen many a times our budgets were focused on giving short-term, results rather than longer-term path. This budget that way is a bold budget where it focuses on longer-term path. So it's making investments in agriculture, in environmental and climate change industry, in fintech and digital. It's trying to create a mechanism whereby entrepreneurs, startup founders, and taxpayers can work on that part to create growth. So, in a very simple sense, instead of giving fish to a person, this budget is trying to teach them fishing so that it's a permanent solution.
Very well put. Now, I was keen on speaking to you, Nilesh, also because of the kind of reaction that you saw in the bond market. And if I'm not mistaken, it has to do with the borrowing number, which was a little bit more inflated than was anticipated. If I'm not mistaken, the market was looking at something along the lines of 12 lakh crore, but we're talking about close to 15 lakh crore. How does one understand what is happening in terms of the spike in the yield on the 10-year? And how does the investor into fixed income adjust accordingly?
So, Alex, your observation is absolutely right. The debt market was looking at a borrowing program of about 12, 13 lakh crore. The real number came at 14.95 lakh crore. But as I mentioned today, when markets will go back and read that 14.95 number is actually because there is a shortfall in small savings collection of 1,66,000 crore, and there is a divestment target downward of 1 lakh crore. That number will become more palatable. Number two, the market was also expecting a roadmap to inclusion in bond indices, which would have brought between 15 to $30 billion in Indian debt market. That would have created an alternate demand for government's borrowing program. Now, there was no roadmap announced in the budget, and hence there is some disappointment on that count also. To a great extent, we believe that the potential actions by RBI in terms of rate movements has already been factored by the market at current level of yield. The yield curve has become steeper and is discounting more than adequately the RBI's action. Now, a lot will depend upon when RBI announces its credit policy later in next week. The RBI's credit policy will determine what will happen to the yield curve and yield movement. For all those investors who are invested into fixed income, my recommendation is to stay invested between 1 to 5 year horizon maturity funds. For example, short-term bond fund, corporate bond fund, PSU debt fund. This is less vulnerable to rising interest rates. And those investors who are perturbed by lower returns on fixed income instruments, including bank deposits and company fixed deposits, my recommendation will be to consider investing in hybrid funds. We have 3 to 4 varieties of hybrid funds available. Conservative hybrid scheme invest between 10 to 25% in equity. Equity savings scheme invest between 25 to 50% in equity. Balance fund invest between 65 to 80% in equity. And balance advantage fund does dynamic allocation. Hybrid funds are definitely more risky than fixed income funds, but they deliver better return to compensate for the risk taken.
Absolutely. And Nilesh, in past conversations, you've mentioned how with the performance of the equity market over the past couple of years, one needs to temper their expectations. But thank you so much for joining in and for helping us make sense of some of those announcements and giving us a flavor and perspective on the fixed income market as well. Always pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you.
All right, now that brings us to the end of this very special broadcast, Budget